In Poland right now, we are facing really massive protests for women's rights, something really unprecedented. 4 years ago, there was those protests that were called Black protests, and they were against the new bill that was proposed by the government, the same government that is running right now. And it was about the same issues we are facing today, basically. So the abortion in Poland for many years now is very, very restricted. Our abortion laws are one of the most restrictive in Europe, and I think in the whole world. About a month ago, our constitutional court, that is now basically controlled by our right-wing government, ruled that one of the cases, the severe fetal defects, that this case is unconstitutional, and abortion in these cases is now illegal. And because it was basically 97%, I think, of all the cases of legal abortions in Poland, now there are basically not going to be any illegal abortions. So it's a very, very major issue. It affects us very deeply. Women are going to be forced to give birth to babies without lungs, without brains, with severe defects, only to watch them die for a few days. It's basically torturing women. And this ruling is irreversible, but we decided to go out to the streets and fight. And at first, protests were very peaceful and very, very massive. But right now, when there are not that many of us in the streets, the police is getting more and more brutal with us to basically demotivate us and scare us and bully us not to go to the streets any longer.
What is the role of Kaczynski here? Because just to mention that he was the head of the party, he still is the head of the party that is in the government at the moment, but now he is also the vice prime minister. How is he involved in all this issue with the Constitutional Tribunal?
Well, it's not a secret that the ruling party, Law and Justice Party, is very authoritarian. Like Jarosław Kaczyński, he is the leader, but also the one and only ruler, and basically his word is something everybody in the party needs to listen, needs to consider. He rules this country by himself, basically. There's not much democracy in this process, even though they won the election. But how it makes its rulings is very debatable.
Actually, the same party, or let's say representative of the party, are both in the presidency and in the government, in the parliament. But Andrzej Duda, which is the president, and his wife kind of gave a different opinion about the ruling. Is that correct?
They didn't say they don't agree with the ruling. And also, I don't think there's any way for the president to overrule the Constitutional Court ruling. It's the highest institution of the law in Poland. So I don't think there are many ways we can reverse it now legally until the government changes.
Kaczynski not only was involved in the process of the ruling because he has a friend which is actually the head of the tribunal, but he actually accused women that were protesting on the street of a crime and to be a threat to the population's health.
Actually, Kaczynski told us that we have blood on our hands because of the protests, and also compared us to Nazis. I'm not very sure if he's 100% conscious on what is happening on the scale of it all. I think he is surprised at the scale of the protests, and definitely he thinks of us as forces of evil. I think he lives in his own bubble, in his own world, surrounded by his yes men, and he doesn't have a grasp of the whole situation. Lately, he was given order to protect the churches because some of the women sprayed some of the slogans of our Protestant churches, and also were coming to the masses to give speeches about women's rights. And he decided that it's a threat to our faith and sent away massive police forces to protect our churches. But nobody was attacking the churches or people praying in them. But he also called to the so-called National Guard, which is basically neo-Nazi guys, to protect them themselves. So he basically called for violence against us.
Mamy stan, w którym te demonstracje będą z całą pewnością kosztowały życie wielu ludzi. Ci, którzy do nich wzywają, ale i także i ci, którzy w nich uczestniczą, wprowadzają niebezpieczeństwo powszechne, a więc dopuszczają się przestępstwa, poważnego przestępstwa. Władze mają nie tylko prawo, ale także obowiązek przeciwstawiania się tego rodzaju wydarzeniom. Ale mają one jeszcze także inny aspekt. Dokonywane są ataki na kościoły. To jest wydarzenie w historii Polski, przynajmniej w tej skali, całkowicie nowe. Trzeba się temu, jeszcze raz powtarzam, przeciwstawić. To obowiązek państwa, ale także obowiązek nasz, obowiązek obywateli. W szczególności musimy bronić polskich kościołów. Musimy ich bronić za każdą cenę. Wzywam wszystkich członków Prawa i Sprawiedliwości i wszystkich, którzy nas wspierają, do tego, by wzięli udział w obronie Kościoła. W obronie tego, co dziś jest atakowane i jest atakowane nieprzypadkowo. Bardzo często w tych atakach widać pewne elementy przygotowania, być może nawet wyszkolenia. Ten atak jest atakiem, który ma zniszczyć Polskę. Ma doprowadzić do triumfu sił, których władza w gruncie rzeczy zakończy historię narodu polskiego tak, jak dotąd go żeśmy postrzegali. Tego narodu, który jest naszym narodem, który mamy w naszych umysłach i w naszych sercach, który jest przedmiotem polskiego patriotyzmu. Brońmy Polski, brońmy patriotyzmu i wykażmy tutaj zdecydowanie i odwagę. Tylko wtedy można tą wypowiedzianą, wprost wypowiedzianą przez naszych przeciwników wojnę wygrać.
They think that when we say this is war, that means that they are excused in using force on us because, well, we said it was war, right?
What is the Catholic Church role in all of this? There is some Catholic group, I don't know if that is the exact word, but some groups that are actually requesting, and that's how all of this started, that abortion should be even more restricted.
Yes, absolutely. The Polish Catholic Church is against abortion in all possible cases, and all the priests are very strict about it, and there is no secret that the ruling party is very, very close to the Catholic Church in Poland. Also, they are often citing the statistics about the Poles being like 92% Catholic, which I don't really think it's true anymore, because yes, for example, my generation we were all baptized, but it was not our choice. And from that moment, we are officially signed to this organization, and there's this whole complicated process to get out your name from the police. So I think the latest statistics show massive wave coming out from the church. In my generation, people are not that interested in being part of the community anymore, and I think it's going to change more and more with every other generation. But the generation of my parents and definitely grandparents is still very devoted to Catholic faith.
So coming back to the protests, how do you think that has impacted the decision of the government? Because as far as I know, they didn't take it in consideration, and right now there is kind of a pause on the process, because they should have taking it in consideration by 2nd of November, and they really didn't.
Our abortion law that was before, we all called it a compromise, and there are people that wanted to protect the compromise. I think right now in this process that is happening, more people want something more that was before, not only come back to the state that was before, but we were offered another compromise. Some parts of the government want to build some places where the children can die after they are born, like hospices and stuff, and that's what they are proposing, which is outrageous for me, really. Even if they allow us in drastic cases, I don't really believe they're gonna happen, because the doctors are so scared they're gonna be prosecuted after, that even now, even before with the old law, they often drag the procedures to just not give the abortion, because they were scared there are gonna be consequences later.
Mm-hmm. I asked you before about Kaczynski's idea of this ruling coming out at this point in the middle of a pandemic, but also Poles, if I believe he looked at them, and they said, and they still say, that people generally, obviously in Poland, they support the 1993 abortion law, which is less restricted, let's say, that the one that they are trying to implement right now. But also the polls at the moment say that most of the people support the protesters. I'm actually going to mention a few stats. So according to Gazeta Wyborcza, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, 73% of polls...
Yes, you're pronouncing it correctly.
Great, thank you. 73% of polls don't support the abortion ruling. 54% support the protesters. 62% think abortion should be legal in certain cases. 22% on demand up to 12 weeks. And then we have other polls, for example, and I'm not that sure that I'm gonna pronounce this correctly, Rzeczpospolita, something like that. And 71% don't agree with the ruling, and also 13% of adult polls have taken part in the ongoing protests, which would mean almost like 4 million people at some point went or joined the protests. That is a huge part of the population. Also, we have to take in consideration that not everyone that is against the ruling and support the protesters go and join the protesters. So maybe there was some wrong strategy or from the government, or maybe they pushed the tribunal in the wrong moment, because as I said, it looks like this is going to have consequences. This is going to have impact not only in women, but people might go against the government, because this, we have to take in consideration that this is happening at the same time that a pandemic. So how do you think that this could be, let's say, impacting the government?
I think those stats are overwhelming and very surprising, taking in consideration that Poland is still very, very conservative country. So it shows how much the government is not aligned with people on this case. But I just think in this case, it's not strategic. I just think Kaczynski has some core beliefs that he's fixated on, and he just won't let go of them, no matter the consequences and no matter the cost. I'm not sure if it's enough to cost the next elections, because we are still very conservative, and the liberal oppositions, they don't have many ideas how to compete with Law and Justice Party on the platform of social care, for example, and this is a very major issue in Poland right now. So, in social services. So I don't know if it's enough to cost the next elections, but I think something must happen, because people just won't agree to this, because it's about our basic, very basic rights. It's It's something that affects all of us very deeply and very personally. It's direct threat to our lives, direct threat to our health. So we just won't let go either. And I really don't know where it's gonna lead us all.
And there was an interview conducted by Stanley Beagle, which is a journalist, has media from Polish news in English. And he was talking with Agnieszka Graf, which is also a women's rights activist, writer and an academic. And what she said, I think that it's interesting. She said that at the beginning, these protesters were led and also organized by women, but then it became protest from young people against the government. So do you think that this has also an impact on young people?
So I think women's rights just became a symbol, like something we can build our case upon. But of course, it was building up in us, especially in young people in Poland that are less and less conservative. And it was definitely the last straw. And some feminists are actually complaining about the protests that were about women and abortion rights are now taken over by people that are just generally not satisfied with our government. But I think it's a very good thing because it's a way, a lifestyle almost to rebel against the government. And it only supports our case, not diminish it.
According to the numbers, there were 100,000 people that day protesting against the ruling. Especially at the beginning, they were as massive as this one. Also, they were protesting not only in big cities, because we have to remember that Warsaw is the biggest city in Poland, but there were also women in villages and in smaller cities as well.
It's very emotional for me.
I'm pretty sure you were there. One of those hats might be yours.
Yes, 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 I was there. It was so touching to see so many people. And yes, as you said, these protests and also those protests that were 4 years ago that I also participated in, they were happening everywhere, absolutely everywhere. There are towns with 1,000 citizens and 700 of them were protesting. I think it's incredible and shows the scale and shows that it's everybody's issue. You can live everywhere, you can have different opinions on other matters, but this is something that deeply affects us all everywhere. First of all, many people complain that the protests are too vulgar, but it also shows, in my opinion, that it's the protest of young people that are just very tired and have enough of what is going on right now. So I think it shows the strength of the protest and the force. It's not hurting our case. So the first picture is the easiest to translate because it's a pun in English actually. Peace off. The peace is Prawo i Sprawiedliwość, which means the Law and Justice Party. So it's just a pun to make it sound like peace off in English. The red lightning is a symbol that we came up with in the previous protests when we went on a strike, when all women just didn't show up for work for one day. And this is the symbol that is most hated by the government because they say it reminds them of the symbol of the SS, two lightnings. But I think it's really ridiculous because there are many symbols in the shape of the lightning that are not affiliated with Nazis, and I think they just do this to show us in a negative light. The poster with the female character from the Alien, the word behind her, I don't know if I can say the curses out loud in this interview. It's wypierdalać, and it means basically fuck off, but in a very vulgar way in Polish. And the font is it's similar to the logo of Solidarność, the huge union that fought off the communists in Poland, Lech Wałęsa. And the black umbrella is very, very fascinating symbol for me because 4 years ago when we started protesting, it was fall, it was autumn, and it was raining. So everybody thought that nobody's gonna show up. 100,000 people show up with umbrellas because it was raining, and because it was a black protest, those were black umbrellas, and the pictures were just amazing from that time. So the umbrella stayed as our symbol also of the women's protests. And we have the 8 stars, which is basically censored version of Jebać PiS, and that means fuck Law and Justice Party.
Jebać PiS! 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 Cała Polska krzyczy dziś! Jebać PiS! Jebać PiS! Wreszcie siła wnioski zbiera! A wystarczy wypierdala! Cała Polska krzyczy dziś! Jebać PiS! Jebać PiS! Nigdy ust nam nie zamkniecie! Jebać was pisowskie świecie! Jebać PiS! 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 Miło to już było, ale teraz to jest wojna. Łapy precz od naszych kobiet. Bando, bogo, wojna. Wyjdźmy wszyscy na ulicę, krzycząc bardzo głośno dziś. Wypierdalać z tego kraju. Jebać PiS! 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 Jebać PiS!
It was playing all the time. Playing from people's windows and balconies. Yes, it was a bit festive at the beginning, at the protests. Like people were dancing on the streets and people were playing guitars and drums and throwing confetti of their balconies, and there are many funny slogans and performances. But right now it's getting more grim with police brutality and with our lowered spirits. We are tired. We are exhausted, to be honest. But we are trying to keep on fighting and keep our spirits high with funny songs and memes and art.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so I think that's everything. I would like to ask you, just to finish, is there anything prepared by women to keep protesting or to keep the movement?
Yes, we are definitely planning to go out to the streets more, regardless the police brutality that we might face. And we are also still trying to contact everybody in the European government to help raise awareness of the situation of Polish women. And also I heard that many countries in solidarity offered that Polish women can get free abortions in their countries. So that might help a lot actually, and I think it's great. But we have to also fight to have these rights in our home in Poland, to make our country less conservative, just more focused on the rights of every citizen, including women, and make it a place that we can live in safely, because many women are just now considering leaving the country, and I really don't want to leave this country. I would like to be safe in it and to be granted my basic rights here in Poland.
I really hope so. I wish you all the luck. And dziękuję bardzo.